and welcome to this special and sacred episode this evening. Welcome to Voices on the Bridge in partnership with Cape Flat Stories. My name is Taryn Lee Bell and I'm joined here with four beautiful women. I thought I'll let you introduce yourself as we start. But let me ground this and say tonight's not going to be an easy conversation, filled with a lot of pain, a lot of voices, some voices that has left, and some voices that are here as mothers. And tonight's episode is about mothers who are mourning and mourning on the Cape Flats. We hold space for three ladies, Abigail, Melanie, and Tammy, mothers that should never have to carry your pain and your burden. And so it's across the Cape Flats. Too many mothers have buried their sons. Boys who once laughed and dreamed, played soccer, that should still be here, is not. And over the last 10 years, we've seen a scourge in brutality on the Cape Flats. Not far away from us, many of us born there, lived there, loved there. Now children are struggling to survive. And so this conversation is not only about loss, it's about the memory, the dignity, and the voices of mothers. Mothers that are mourning. Mothers whose grief tells us a story that we can no longer ignore. And so this evening, I'm absolutely privileged to be here with you ladies. I thought that I'll just quickly ask you to introduce yourself. And we're going to start over there with you, Tammy. Just who you are, where you're from, and what your son, what was his name?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Tamarin Kutsia, and my son was Tariq Kutsia, and we are from Delft.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Melanie Hendricks. I'm the mother of Lishan Hendricks. We are from Hanover Park. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Abigail Solomons, and I'm from Delft. I'm the mother of Bronte Solomons.
And the special lady next to me who has been telling me, calling me, and Uncle Stan, I need you to listen and hear these women's stories. And so I want to thank you, Zaironisa, for your courage. But just tell us a bit about who you are, your organization in Bonteheuwel, and the important work that you do.
Evening, everyone. My name is Zaironisa Bafkans, and I'm from Bonteheuwel. So the organization that I run is the Bonteheuwel Youth Movement. But under that banner, I've not done any work like this. The reason I am here where I am is because my friend lost her son.
Sure.
And I felt that I needed to be her support. And with that support came a group called Justice is Coming, a support group for moms who has lost their sons to gang violence.
Yeah.
And that is where this group of ladies come from. There's a lot more ladies, there's a lot more women, there's a lot more mommies. And we have been reaching out to other mommies. But these were the ones that I approached to join us here.
Sure.
So everybody knows Mel's story.
Yeah.
Mel has been one of the brave women who's been very vocal about bringing her son's murderers to justice. Abigail and Tamarin. Tamarin is very emotional. It's very fresh for her. And she makes me emotional.
Yeah. And I think it's okay. I think it's okay. And I know that that's going to be the tone of this conversation. It's a conversation that is filled with empathy and compassion. It's also filled with humanity. And so we are here as mothers today. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Zaino, for coming and bringing them along. And I think that this is just one part of many conversations that must be held. And even if you sit there and say nothing, it's going to be okay. And so I'm going to start with the uncomfortable question. I mean, we have three beautiful young men here that are framed. And often when people are framed or children are framed, it's because they graduated. It's because they went to their matric ball. Not because this was their coffin. Because I think this hood symbolizes a coffin. It's why I asked for it to be here. and that's the real truth. And so I also want to say is that we went to watch a movie we did a preview for a movie called The Heart is a Muscle. And someone said on social media, I'm hoping that the movie is not a typical Cape Flat story, the stereotype. And it wasn't. But I need people to understand that the reality of the Cape Flats is not a stereotype. The guns and the violence is not a stereotype. It's the lived reality of our people. It's the lived reality that our children are not finishing their matric. Our children don't see their 21st nor their first graduation. And so with that, I'm going to ask you, Abby, to go right into it and tell us a bit about, give his beautiful picture a name and tell us about what had happened.
Oh, my son Bronte. I stayed at a friend's place that time. We're actually from Voorburg. By that time, I stayed in suburban
And this is all Delft.
Delft. So his cousin came the afternoon. It was in load shedding. He came, and when it was like your son that is 5 years old, you would have asked, "We're going to," but because he's 22, you don't ask. Oh, he's gonna go to the shop. He's gonna go. So they left the house. That time, my friend was also not there, and they literally left. It was not minutes. The cousin came back and he just said, Auntie Abby, die pieces het vir Bronte gevang en 'n skoot het afgegaan.
When you say
The pieces.
pieces, and that would be a gang name.
As a gang name. I don't know the pieces. I've heard about them.
Okay.
And I just thought to myself, 'n skoot het afgegaan, dood. So my kind is dood. And my eldest son was sitting at the table and I told him, don't sit, run to the scene. So then the people came saying, no, your child is still alive, he's not dead, waiting on the ambulance and everything. A sister came, she said, I need to come pray for my son, but a police officer heard her, and then he just said, don't call the mother to the scene.
Sure.
So I told her, I'm not going to go to the scene. My friend's son came from school. He was like, the stuff is hanging out of his head. And I was like, I went ballistic. I don't want to hear nothing. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And then my son got 2 fits. Then the third one, the eldest son said, now when are you driving? Because the ambulance is standing here. When are you taking my brother to hospital?
Yeah.
So he did not die on scene. He died at the day hospital. When I got to Delft Day Hospital, I already phoned Tamarin. She's my friend from school, and my other friend Juanita. So I phoned them. They were still praying and hoping because he was still alive. So when I got to Delft Day Hospital, he already passed. So the doctor said, I had so much hope for Bronte, but when I felt his head, it was too soft. So he wasn't shot dead. They actually hit his head. Literally, they hit it. There were 6, and he was only 1.
Sure.
Because after the shot, he still ran. And then they ran after him in a yard where he was. So they were hitting him. So at that time, I was just thinking, my child's cry, where's my mother, where's my father,
Yes.
where's my friends,
Yeah,
where's my
sure.
aunt, where's my uncle? It's,
So Abigail, I want to ask this question, then we're going to move on to Mal. It sounds like it was overkill. And the first question they often ask is, why were they so angry? Was he in trouble with the PCs? And then the famous question was, or is he a gangster?
okay, I can say that we stay in Voorburg. The gang there in Voorburg is the nice kids. But he had a girlfriend that was also stayed in Eindhoven. And apparently, Eindhoven can't date Voorburg. It's like, so, yeah, that was the...
So there's even territory
Yes,
with
there's
girls.
territory with girls and with the nice times territory and it's Eindhoven, so that was also. And with his friends, photos, fingers, posting. So I don't know if there was a fight between them or whatever, but...
Thank you very much, Abby. I just want, you can give it to Mal. I just want to ask a question and we can park it there. You said you phoned Tammy. Did this horrific thing not happen to Tammy yet?
No, not yet.
Sure.
Not
How long ago was this?
2 years.
Wow.
2 years ago. 2024, the 22nd of February.
Sure. Mal, And so we all know Mal, and she needs no introduction. And I want to say Mal has been brave. I saw Mal outside court, I saw Mal on social media, but I also saw just a broken mother. I saw a mother that's grieving, and often the manifestations of grief is different. In Steenberg, we had a mother praying over a lifeless body. I said, no, this is not something spiritual here. This is trauma. And so I want to speak to not Mal, the activist today. I want to speak to Mal, the mother of this 16-year-old.
Darren, all I can say is hard. It's very, very hard. Just take each day as it comes. On the 18th of December, that was 5:45. I just had a normal day. My phone is always busy, nothing strange. I remember I was so irritated. I never get irritated by that day. I was so irritated because my phone was ringing and messages like the entire time. And then I told myself, jy sit die phone op bietjie neer in me time. And when I did that, not long after that, my phone kept on ringing. There was more than 26 missed calls. But I didn't find it strange. It's normal. People always reach out to me for blocked trains or something happening, or if there was a shooting, they will phone for the AMBO or anything. So it's normal. I didn't find it strange. And I remember I opened my phone and there were a lot of WhatsApp messages. And then I opened Nazima's message and all I heard is, Mel, is jou kind wat hulle geskiet het. I never ever experienced that before. I lost a lot. I lost my father, about both my sisters, 2 years ago, my nephew. But I've always been calm. I've always been the calm. Know how to handle situations. But everything just happened at once. I remember I was screaming so hard. My neighbors came out running. I remember I grabbed a knife, jumped in the car. I didn't care how I looked. I was just only wearing a sweater, basically, a panty. I only had socks on here. My hair was a mess. Didn't care. I got to the scene. There was a lot of people. Everyone known to me. I jumped out and I just asked, wat de maas op P het my kind geskiet. I just wanted a name. That was even before I got to him. When I got there, my child was gone. I knew he was gone. I could see he was gone. It was thick blood, a lot of blood. I tried to pick him up, but I just felt no. It was just so heavy. I called this guy to load him in the car. Drove to Heideveld. I knew he was gone. I was hoping there was a heartbeat. I just remember the one sister told me, doctor is busy with him, so it is something good. I was praying, I was hoping. Then finally they came out, called me into a room. So I knew. I didn't want to hear it. Like, how can you tell me my child is dead? How? How do you tell me my child is gone? I've always been the one assisting people with these type of things.
And I want to say this, out of everything that you've been saying online and to the world, the one thing is that I go to crime scenes for other mothers' children,
And you-
but not once did I think this is going to be my child.
Yes. And I've always been vocal, especially where innocent kids are concerned. Everyone that knows me knows, nee, soos vir my halfvou nie ding gat brand. But I never ever thought or expected I'll be called to a crime scene for my own. If my child lived like that, I would have understood. He suffered from epilepsy, was diagnosed about 2 months prior to his death. So my worst fear were always that he will get sick on the road, even the day before his passing. My daughter told me Lishan is going to the beach on Saturday. I still told her, but he can't go without me. And then she asked me why. I said, if he's going to get sick, who's going to help him? Nobody's going to help him. Nobody's going to know what to do. And then I remember I still told her, dan gaat my kind mos dood, unknowingly.
Malai, before we hand over, I just want to ask you, so this is a grade 8?
Grade 9.
Grade 9 pupil. Nee? This is a 16-year-old. The 16-year-old is at Crystal High. If I think of when I was 16, I remember it was my prom, and 8. Die moes nie met hom gebeur het nie. So if we think about him, was it a crossfire?
The one accused, Biza, knew my child. Because my kid's father is a well-known gangster. It's his brother. He is one of the old mongrels, so he was no longer active. But they knew him. They knew my child. I won't say he grew up in front of Biza, but for the past 8 years, Biza came there, so my child was still a child, 8 years old.
So Mal, if I understand you correctly, Biza is his uncle.
No,
It is whose brother?
like the gang brother.
Oh,
The gang
okay,
brother. When
okay.
I refer to that, my apology.
Okay.
But he knew my child. And except my child being there, it was a park. It was near a park. There were a lot of other kids. They didn't care. They were on a mission to kill. They came to kill their own mongrel brother. They didn't care who's going to get hurt in the process.
Sure.
They were sent to do a job. I'm not sure if they were going to be paid or what, but they were determined to finish what they came for. My child was shot 3 times. Twice through the chest, 1 through the neck.
Sure.
The witnesses on the scene, there were quite a few, told me my child asked him, why are you shooting me? But they still shot my child. They still shot my child. My child was calling out for his mother. Because he thought and he knew if his mother was the I would have, my child knew that. I went bizarre. I literally felt to burn down houses to get those responsible for my child's death. I went from house to house looking for these accused, those responsible for his death. I remember I had a whole community behind me. I didn't know where the people came from, but God knows they were there.
And I think we're going to leave it there for now, Mal. But I want to thank you for sharing. I think it's such a sensitive conversation, because there's nothing stopping a grieving mother or an angry mother. I said to someone when I saw your fury, I said, I think I will burn down stuff too. And now you're saying I want to burn things down, because that's often what people do when they are in trauma. But we're going to come back and we're going to touch on gangs, fear, and the justice system. But I want us to go to Tammy. Tammy's from Delft.
Yes.
And this pain is so fresh. And so I'm going to allow you just to tell us a little bit about this handsome young man that should have been here with us today.
My son was 23 years old. he had a little boy, my grandson, and he was like literally my everything.
Can you tell us his name?
Tariq.
Tariq?
Tariq.
Tariq.
He was literally my everything. And he always used to tell me, when her son passed away, then she always told me, I mustn't make so much of Tariq, because I really loved him, and everybody that knows us, child was the most humble child, really, and the most respectful child.
Yeah.
And he wasn't affiliated with gangsters, with nothing. He was a hard-working father. And she always told me, and she lost her son, and she always told me, "Moet jy so baie van Tariq maak, wanneer hy kom haal, die was so die beste voor lief is."
It's okay.
New Year's Eve, he came to me. He had his own place, his own little family. He came to me and he said he wanted to spend the night with us, me and my friend, but I didn't feel like partying or having a drink or something
Yes.
like that because I was going to work the next day. And then his girlfriend's father came to pick him up. The next morning when I woke up, my ex-mother-in-law, she came to me and she told me my son was stabbed and I must answer my phone. And then my ex-husband phoned me and he told me he's at the hospital and we just lost our son. I still, up until today, I don't know what happened. I don't know how it happened, but I just know he was stabbed. And then that is how my son died.
I want to thank you, Tammy. I think we must acknowledge and honor that this is not an easy conversation. And so we will take pauses and we will break and we will breathe. But above all, we're going to hold the space for you. And we're not going to push beyond what we can. Okay? And if that's all you want to share for now, that's okay, Tammy. But I want to say, it's important to say that this is the friend of Abigail who lost her son 2 years ago. And she called the bestie to say, my son. And 2 years later, it happens.
I went exactly through the same. With her son, it was like exactly the same trauma.
Ironically, Abigail and I chatted.
Yeah,
Let's
I
wipe
followed her.
let's wipe the tears.
I followed her on Facebook.
Oh, is that how you, okay.
And I still told Tammy that time her son was still alive. I said, Tammy, I'm following this woman from Nova Park. They killed her son. He's 16 years old and I've been following her.
Yeah.
I said, you should follow her. But I don't know why I said you should follow her because I'm the one that lost the son at that time. And I messaged her one night and I said, yo, the fucking piece of my concern. I sent her a photo of my son and she's like, yo, die moeste and whatever. But that was a chat. And so with her son's passing, I still followed Mel, and then I said, Tammy, you should, and then she followed Mel. And that's where Mel asked on the Facebook that to open a group for moms, and that's where we get connected. But at Tyrick's grave last Sunday, so Mel organized to put up that, what do you call that? A rally. So she organized it, she came and she spoke actually what she talked about now. She said
Yeah.
what happened to us and how she was like a
Yes.
mother. And I just stood there, I'm like, yo, you were the mother. You know that movie, The Mother on the motorbike. And then I said, you know what, Mel, I'm so scared
Sure.
for my sons because killers, there's no justice.
Yes.
I went to, after my sons, I asked the police, so what is there for my son? So they said, no statement. We can't go on. He said, I said, they said. I'm like, but we know their names, we know their faces, everything. You know, the justice just failed me with my son.
And I'm glad you're going there because we're going to introduce that now.
So now,
Quickly, about the justice system, I know that Mel said their names. Mel put us all at risk. And that's okay. But there is a serious and a very real thing on the Cape Flats that our lives are in danger when we say their name, whether it's a man,
True.
whether it's a gangster. I have a colleague that is in protection because she said his name. And it's not just for you, it's for everyone around
everyone,
you.
yes.
And so I want to speak about that real thing. People often from the outside, they say, people don't speak out, people don't speak up. And it's very easy for people to say that. But the reality is, you stay there still. So how is that for you? Where are you in the process now with the justice system? Is no case?
Nothing. I still do have other kids also. So concerning them,
You've decided not to pursue it?
yes, because I've got a son that is 16 years old. So the way he dress, it's like he's a gangster, but he's not. Hoodie top, posting on photos and so forth. I'm like literally like, I'm in fear for him.
And you again touching on something that I want to bring up is that I met this mother in Heidelberg and she says part of a job as a parent, which you'll not find in Upper Weinberg or Constantia, is to teach your son how to dress.
Yes.
I stress when my son wears
Yes.
a hoodie, Taryn, because they may just think.
They may just
I
think,
stress when his pants hang down, I lift his pants because he's seen it there and it's not the way a gentleman should dress, but that is how it's seen. So I want us, before we go into the justice system, I want to speak about the Cape Flats. I want us to speak about the infrastructure and the architecture of this place where we were dumped in the 1950s. And we don't want to speak about it, but something fundamentally is wrong there. Why is it that the conversation I must have with my son will differ to the conversation you have with your son? Why is it that in Delft there's a skills school where young people between the ages of 15 and 25 is not in education? They are low trained with no to little skills. And that's why we come into a system. Had they stayed in the leafy suburbs, by 25, he would have had his first degree, first car. Hy sal in sy ma se agterjaar gebly het. So there is systemic issues that is wrong. And when they say to some of us, he had a choice. What choice did this young man have if that is all he has seen? If my dad has done that, what choice did I have? I have someone in my class, ek vra vir hom, hoekom huil jy? Wat gaan nou aan? Hy sê, juffrou, juffie, my ouma sê, daar's niks kos by die huisie. And so he's sitting here, he wants to learn, but he gets a meal, so he's feeling guilty, because hy sit nou in Delft school, he's going to get a trade in hospitality, but the stuff at home is still happening. And so what stops this young man? Hy dra gou sloffies en kouse klas toe. What stops him from taking a 10,000 rand or 1,500 rand for a pair of Jordans, and all he must do is take someone out?
Yes.
It may seem impossible for a mind outside of the flats to believe, but I want us to say, and I often ask, can that question not be, was he a gangster? The tattooing of his, he may not even know why he did it and what it would have cost him. What? This is all Cape Flats areas. This is all areas that are overcrowded. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this physical, tangible space for young men on the Cape Flats, for boys? And this is not us excusing, but saying this is the lived reality.
You know, the system, especially on the Cape Flats, ons is gemaak om mekaar vrek te maak. It's so overcrowded. So, of course, one family, there's 3 families staying in one house. I know quite a few where the one brother is a mongrel, the other brother is American. So they are, in the house they are brothers, but outside they are enemies. Then you've got the mother standing in the middle because they are forever arguing. From I can, like, when I speak about the justice system with regards to my son, I received a lot of help. The colonel from Philippi. Most policemen are known to be corrupt, but I can applaud that man.
And Philippi police station doesn't have a very good reputation, and so that is something so
a lot.
Good.
There's, like my nephew's case, there was no witnesses, there was nothing. But I can be thankful with my son. Even the witnesses came forward.
sure.
Without me having to consult them or whatsoever. The colonel, He's been doing the work of the IO.
Wow.
Myself and the community and even the political party, I'm part of the NCC, we approached the colonel. I didn't want the IO on my son's case because he was known on the streets. It was known as being corrupt.
Can you define the IO for people that are listening? When you say IO, what is the acronym stand for?
Investigating officer.
Okay.
So there were word on the street. I personally don't know him. I never interacted with him, so I personally don't know him. But there were word on the street that he's been working with these gangsters. And when I approached the colonels, both Mr. Sulsa and CS, they jumped in and damage control.
Sure.
I don't know why, if it's because I was too vocal. I don't know why, if it was because my child was innocent, but there's quite a few innocent
That
that never
doesn't get the
received
same.
the same treatment.
And I want to ask you, Zaino, to respond to that because you are working with many of these mothers. This is just a sample face of what the reality is. I think you are privileged to have gotten the support, Mal. I probably think it's your angels. But it's not a reality for many others, mothers that are mourning alone, that don't have the support, even the court support.
It is difficult. I can tell you. Okay, so when I got into this, the whole being a community activist, and that was like maybe 8 years ago, and the first actual crime scene that I went to was that of a young man who was gunned down in the street like a dog. And he was one of those up and coming soccer players just about to pass to matric. He was in grade 11 and he had just gotten the news on that day that he had passed to matric. And you know, it was a whole jolly affair because the night before we were with him at a matric ball because he was my friend's partner, her daughter's partner. He escorted her to her matric ball. And the very next afternoon, I get the word with my brother-in-law running into the house telling me, Zaino, they just shot Dylan. And I was looking at him and I was like, no, why would they shoot Dylan? And he said to me, yes, he's laying by the shops. And I jumped up and I ran. I didn't have on shoes. I had on the tights and a sweater. I never dressed that way.
Yeah.
And we just kept going. And his partner, the girl who he escorted the day before, she was standing and she was asking me, Auntie Zaino, where are you going? And I was like, Dylan has been shot. And she was like, no, he's not. And I was like, yes, we just got the word. And she said, but I took him home. And I was like, no, coming. And she went with me. And when we got to the scene, the only thing I remember getting to that scene was Dylan's mom's screeching. The sound that came from that woman was not normal. And his brothers, it was actually the first time I got pepper sprayed as well. But yes, so that was when I realized that our communities have a very, very big problem. The stigma attached to it, because it was said, was he a gangster? Why was he walking there?
Yeah.
Why didn't he run when he saw the guy coming? Why do our boys need to run? Why are our boys getting judged for walking in a different direction or walking into territory of a different gang?
Sure.
I can tell you, in Bonteheuwel, I get labelled a gang protector by my ward councillor, but we're not going to speak on that. I keep saying, if I'm a gang protector and I live in the territory that is
Gang infested.
by my side of the area is Americans. So the Americans know I'm not protecting them. So who am I protecting if I'm walking in a different direction into the territory of a different gang? So now I become a target. You understand? So sometimes our politicians are also very loose with their mouths.
Yes, and irresponsible.
Yes. So even that in itself is a problem, because in our communities we are fighting these kinds of things. We are fighting the drug merchants. We are fighting those who are breaking in. Just yesterday we were handing out food, soup and acne and all those things. And they came to stand in the line, waiting alongside children who we know that's going to be our only meal. But you as a gangster feel, you can come and stand in this line. And I told them, no. As long as you are robbing, breaking into people's
Sure.
house and shooting, you will not stand in a food
Sure.
line alongside our children. And some of them were like, you're Miss Buffkins and stuff like that. But this is our stance.
Yeah.
We can't be, as long as they know that there's always going to be that door that's going to be open for them. They're never going to be held accountable, and they should be held accountable. They should be.
That word, accountable, I want us to leave it there. And it's a word I'm going to probably ask our guest to speak about. It's going to come up very soon. But before I call him up, I want to ask you, Tammy, is there anything that you want to add? I know we left it very prematurely. He was 27, he was working.
23.
23, he was working.
Yes.
He was a father.
His father, yes.
And was he caught in the crossfire?
Like, I understand, like I said, I really don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But because I also don't want to know what happened to my son, and I don't want to know his last moments.
Okay.
And, but the people that was with him, they said that he tried, the guy was going to stab his friend. That's
Okay.
what the friend told me.
Okay.
He told me that his exact words was to me, hy sal vir my gestiek het toe keer Tyreek. But my son was never one to interfere when there was fights. Even you can ask her because she knows my child. I don't want to speak well of him because he's my son, but my child was really very respectful
Yes.
and very humble, and he was never involved in fights. And he will always stand one side if fights happen or stuff like that. But just that specific night. But that is what his friend said. He was going to stab him, and then Tariq came to stop him, and then he got stabbed. And after that, I don't even know. There is a case pending. The person who stabbed him is currently in prison, and we are appearing the 17th of March again because he's trying to get bail, which I hope he doesn't get.
So
because I don't
you
think
actively walking this case?
Yes.
And you've got
I'm following the case, yes. Every court date I will be there. And I do have the support of my family. I do have an amazing family and friends.
Wonderful.
My colleagues, my son's colleagues, everybody. I do have a lot of support.
Good.
But this is just a very, very difficult time for me. Because my grandson is literally has to grow up without his father now, and he loved that child. He loved the child and he worked for him. And even he had his own family still worked for me. He helped me out so much where he can. He was just an amazing child, truly. And that is all.
That's okay. That's okay, Tammy. Thank you for sharing. I want to ask one last question, and it's something that we're not even going to be able to answer. It's a theme probably. And again, it was this movie I watched on Friday. And while the narrative was stereotypical, it's the Cape Flats, you know. The guy has a past. But there's an element there on redemption. There's an element there with pertaining to a father that is absent. Okay? And so I quickly want to ask about that because it's something, it's real. In the space, in a very clinical space, in youth development, you'll hear even in Paul Small, they say 90% of the people that is there did not have a father. And even if the father was there, he was absent. And so you have been at many crime scenes. I've been working in social development for 20 years. I've also been at crime scenes, and I said there is a legacy of men absent from the home to the crime scene to the mortuary, and then afterwards when mother sits with the voices that has gone silent, when mother sits at the table and you're still putting that plate of food out for your son. Can we quickly, if you are...
That is exactly where I'm now, at that stage.
Yes.
I divorced in 2015. So at that time, my son, Paul Bronte, was 14. So I think my ex-husband thought that time that we are the only people in the whole world that's got divorced. Because after that, no interact, no visiting, no checking up, nothing. So when this happened with Bronte, I asked him for Tyron. So I think the absence father
Yes.
is playing a role, especially in boys.
And so I'm not
A
going
boy,
to
a boy
child.
need a dad in their life. And with our community and colours and Cape Flats, literally. Soos my broer van my gesê het, ek gaan jou moer. Jou ma kan jou, ek moer vir jou. And that is what it is. 'n Kind het sy pa nodig. En as ons se pa's dit wil weet hê, of dit wil besef hê, dan moet hulle maar net aanvaar om heeltyd graf of pols moet te besoek, want dit is wat dit is.
Gaan gebeur.
So of ons geskei is, Tammy is ook geskei. En dit is baie moeilik as jou ex-man geskei is en hy het ook nie die support van die vrou wat hy weer mee getrou het nie, dan maak dit ook vir hom as pa baie moeilik. In my case is dit so en in Tammy se geval is dit ook so. Want die enetjie wil mos nou, ek sê vir jou dit, en dit is ook maar, sorry dat dit
It has a ripple effect.
yes,
And-
do that.
And we have to be,
And I actually blamed my ex-husband, fiancé, for my son's passing.
Sure.
And I'm actually still blaming it today. But I'm really struggling to ask God for forgiveness because soos ek vir haar gesê het, soos my kerk gesê het, hulle sê mos wat God gedoen het is wel gedaan. But hulle was geroep van die duiwel af.
sure. And
I don't think God would have let Tyrick be stabbed or Bronte the way he died. I don't think that's from God. I think it is die duiwel. Hulle was geroep.
And I say that often. We spoke about, is it Kadir? Kadir was 4 or 5 from a Nova Park. And I wrote something for him and I said, it was not your time, little
It
man.
was not your
You were
time.
robbed.
You were robbed. They were robbed.
And so I'm going to park it there because I feel that this is as deep as we can go for today. We definitely have to have more conversations. We definitely have to have more healing circles. Because I want to say this. This is how our young men, we are born into the trauma. And in another family, Melanie could have been, or you could have been the mother giving birth with all of this trauma. After this, in a month's time, and that baby feels it.
Yes.
And we don't know what happens, but all of a sudden, baby acts out. There is an impact when the daddy is not there. I'm a single mom. I can only but be a mother.
Yes.
I stand, I'm strong, but a father can only be a father, and a mother can only be a mother. And that is a reality. From the Cape Flats to Gugulethu to New York, Brooklyn, where there's no father, where poverty is in abundance, there's often not a father. But today, I said, it's all well and good we speak, and we have these conversations because it's important. It's important for our stories to be told. It's important for people to understand. And often, when I'm writing and I get attacked on social media, people inbox me and say, I really didn't know. I have white other friends or colleagues that say, I didn't see it from that side of the mountain. Because often it's just a mountain that's blocking your view and you don't get that lived experience. But healing and trauma and grief is part of life. And we as people of color, we don't understand that. We kap aan. Nee? Ons moet dinge doen. We must go back to work. A phenomenal thing, an indicator on the Cape Flats is we run to the trauma. We run to the crime scene. I've seen crime scenes where there are children. When you hear a gunshot, dan sê hulle gaan kyk waar dit is. And so, the last crime scene I was at, because I don't do that no more, was a 14-year-old boy, and the brains were on the, and I'm going to say it, the brains were on the pavement. And so we are there, and eventually the body goes. And so guess what the community does? Can you think of this happening in Constantia? We are busy cleaning the remains of a 14-year-old boy, ons vier die brains weg. And then guess what happens afterwards? We sit and we light up a cigarette and we talk because it's normal.
It's normal, yeah. And also the other thing, especially what happens in our communities, when there is a body laying there, the family doesn't even know that person was shot or passed on or whatsoever. We tend to run, make videos and put it on social media. The disrespect in that.
Sure.
You know, luckily I got to the scene in time. And I made that comment. Be ever 'n foto van my kind
Sure.
as in julle ma se pie. That's all I said. There were not once a photo or video.
And so with that, I introduced it because, sure, I have I have an expert in this space, and I think you don't want me to call him an expert. But I've asked a mentor of mine, Pastor Greg West, and so he's a social worker, and so we connect there. But he's also a pastor with years of pastoral care. He's buried children, he's buried older people, but he also is a social worker and a therapist and a life coach. He also lives in Mitchell's Plain. And so I've asked him to come, and maybe I should welcome, Pastor, I should welcome you to the circle,
Inner circle.
the inner circle, this very safe circle this evening. And so he's here in the capacity as a father, a father's heart, a pastor, but then also as a professional. You know, we deal with trauma all the time and we don't even know it. We deal with grief and we don't even know it. And then tomorrow we have your son or your daughter act out at school, and we label them as they have behavioral problems. We label them as dom, hulle moet in aanpassingsklas gaan. We don't know that before that child came to school, they were at a crime scene. They were hungry. There was fights. He's angry because daddy's not home and mommy's always angry. And so we don't understand this child. And so there's lots of layers to this, this conversation. But today he's here to speak about this thing called Mothers Who Mourn Grief, the Cape Flats. And so I'm not even going to ask him systematically to answer. I thought maybe we'll start and just say, you've heard a lot of what was said, everything that was said. And the conversation is really framed around trauma and grief and experienced by mothers on the Cape Flats specifically, who has lost children to brutal violence. And often, and I don't even think often, always, the perpetrator is not someone we don't know. It's like GBV. The man is not someone we don't know. Because we all want to throw them away, Pastor, all these men. But guess what? They are brothers. They are uncle. It's neighbors. And so are the perpetrators.
Well, thank you, Taryn.
I know that's loaded.
Yeah, no, it's quite loaded. Yeah, when I saw what you wanted me to speak about it and the time frame,
Sure.
I said, actually, what I only can do is just lay a foundation.
Yes.
You know, there should be an ongoing talk and interaction. You know, but first of all, allow me to salute you.
Come on.
You know, so I respect you.
Sure. And I want to say, it's impossible to be clinical because it's lived experience. This is also kinders.
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, sometimes we tend to just talk about stats and the violence and, you know, the communities and stuff like that. But as Terena said, you know, it's to focus really today on grief and the trauma that you have experienced, you know, about the mothers and the families and, you know, communities, all of that. And also,
I think I'm just going to...
yeah, if you can just project this. Yeah.
Our technical guy ran away, I think.
No, he's there. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So you know, I like to write things down so I don't get off track, especially with time. You know, like you told me I have 2 hours. You know, then I would just, you know, speak.
Yeah.
All of that. So so we deal with mothers and families and communities, you know, whose hearts are broken, really, you know, and so behind every young man, as I said, you know, who dies in violence is a mother who carried him, a mother who prayed for him, and a mother who dreamed of a future for him. I think there's all of you. You know, when you birth your child, it's not, oh wow, beautiful boy, you know, you have dreams from little baby on, you know, and you brag and say, he's going to be this. He's going to be better than me. He's going to be better than his uncles. He's going to be better than his father. He's going to be better. You know, that's our dream. That's normal for us to do that. So when a mother loses a child in violence, and the grief, the experience is often what we call traumatic grief. Now, traumatic grief it happens when loss is sudden and violent and unexpected. Not something you expect. Not somebody that's on a deathbed and you go and say your goodbyes. You know, you are traumatized and you are grieving at the same time. Okay, so this is different from just ordinary grief, and so it leaves the person not only mourning, okay, the loss, but also struggling with the shock. Yeah, that's the first thing. You know, the images, as you've heard, but you've seen, okay, that stays with you, and the unanswered questions, and sometimes even a feeling of guilt. You know, there as well. So many mothers replace the last moments in their minds, as we've heard, you know, as you were running, and, you know, in their minds, and, you know, you ask yourself questions, you know, could I have done something differently? What if I've told him not to? You know, what if I told him that? You know, what if? You know, so why my child? Why did this happen? Okay, so these questions often are not easy to answer, and may have, you know, and make the pain that we have just heavier. Okay, but the impact, it has an impact on families and communities. Okay, so the loss of a child affects far more than just one person. It affects the entire family system and the wider community. Okay, not just emotionally and psychologically, but also physically, spiritually, as well as economically. So let me just highlight that a little bit for you. Yeah? The emotional impact, we've heard that. You know, people also the emotions. Emotionally, mothers often experience deep sadness and anger and shock and sometimes numbness, emotionally paralyzed. You know, I've seen sometimes people just collapse.
Yeah.
You know, just out. Okay? And then, as you've heard here, the fear that you have afterwards. You know, that emotion of fear for those gangsters, for the shooters, for the killers. You know, they may come after you or your children. And then also, you know, the disappointment that you have in the system. There's nothing we can do. Yes, we know who they are, but we can't go after you, as you said. Yeah? And those things are, you know, so grief can come in waves. Yeah? It comes and it goes. It's like the ocean. It's like the waves of the ocean. You know, one day you feel better, the other day it's just gone. And it goes on, you know, not only for a few weeks or months, years. It just doesn't disappear so easily as people will expect it to disappear. You know, then there's a psychological impact. You know, psychologically, traumatic loss can lead to anxiety and depression or post-traumatic stress. You know, you just want to give up on anything. So mothers may struggle, you know, with sleep. We haven't even said, how do you feel? You know, your psychology how did it impact on you psychologically? Okay, constant worry about your other children that came out. Okay, and also, you know, disturbing memories. I mean, you broke when you just talk about it, because everything just become fresh again in you. Okay, and so you break. Now, also there are physical impacts of this. You know, people tend to just focus on, you know, the psychological and emotional, but look at the physical impacts. You know, grief also affects the body. Okay, Sometimes people don't feel like eating or they eat, when they're traumatized, they always go, they sleepless nights. So many grieving mothers experience exhaustion, typical headaches, high blood pressure. All of a sudden you have illnesses that you never had before, okay? And they went for test, but your blood pressure is quite high, and all those kind of things. That's all part of it. So, and also a weakened immune system. All of a sudden the body just collapses, just goes down. And you catch all kinds of other things. You're catching colds and flus and they want to go over, you stay sick and, and all those kind of things. So the body carries the weight of grief unknowingly. Then the spiritual part of it, the spiritual impact that we experience. Spiritually, grief can create deep questions about faith, questioning God. Okay? So some people feel closer to God, and while others struggle and ask, God, why did you allow this to happen? Isn't it? So these questions are natural and part of the grieving process. There's nothing wrong with it. You're allowed to. Some people say, you can't ask God that, God is going to, is going to be happy with you. God gaat jou straf. No.
Yeah.
No. If we read the Bible, we find even Job questioned God, why? Okay? And Job was a man close to God's heart. So it's normal. It's part of your grieving process. I'll come later on to about people and how they interact with you. Okay? So, and then the economic impact. A father that died had to support a child. Yeah? So in many families, the loss of a young man can also create economic strain. A young man perhaps that was working, had to support his family, So he has a household, and then there's funeral costs and all other kinds of expenditures that you have, and it places a heavy burden on families. You can feel that economic loss, the financial loss in cases like this. And then there's what we call the communal impact, the community impact, or collective grief.
Sure.
And I think if I mention some of these things here, it's some things that you've also mentioned. In communities where violence happens, frequently grief becomes collective, it becomes shared, it becomes communal. That's why you have an organization in a community, supporting the mothers and the families. Okay? So neighbors mourn together. Okay? Schools that's losing learners. Okay, so it becomes a community. Churches that buries young people and mosques that bury young people, and over time communities can become emotionally exhausted. And that's one thing we have to look at. By repeated trauma,
Sure.
the repeated violence, repeated killings of our young boys, okay, which then becomes the acceptable norm, becomes just part of life. It's normal, the sound of a gunshot. Oh, well, it's normal. There they're shooting again. We saw earlier, but they're running to the scene. All that. Later it becomes normal. It's just part of life. So it becomes acceptable. It's just the way things are for us. And then one thing Taryn touched on, and it was the role of the father. Yeah? We talk about, the role of fathers and fatherlessness. The absentees, the absenteeism of a father. So another important part of this conversation is the role of the fathers. So many young boys grow up without a consistent father figure or positive male role models. Sometimes there are fathers in the house, but they are not role models. Okay? To the children and to the boys. And father absence does not automatically lead to violence. That's why they try to label our children, our boys. No, there's no father in the house, you're going to be this, you're going to be a gangster. It happens in our schools, where teachers are labeling our children, our boys, because of where they live. Yes. Oh, you're from Delft, you're going to be no good. You're from Belhar, or you from Hanover Park, or you from the Delft, you're going to be no good. Okay, by the way, I worked in all those three areas. as a social worker.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but anyway, so our kids are being labeled because there's no father. But you can also leave boys without searching. You can leave them with, and they go and search for identity. They want to belong somewhere. So that's the whole thing. And so they're looking for belonging, looking for guidance. And sometimes they find it within the gang system. Okay? So fathers or positive male role models play a crucial role in helping boys develop. They help them to develop a sense of identity. They help to develop emotional stability. They help to develop discipline and responsibility. They help them to healthy models of masculinity, being men. Okay, and that is what is needed. So when these influences are missing in our boys, many sometimes look for belonging somewhere else, as I said before, in gangs, in peer pressure, or environments that promise protection and identity. Okay, but ultimately lead them into danger. Okay, so this is why the presence of male mentors and coaches and pastors and teachers and the community leaders becomes so important.
We have 5 minutes, Pastor.
Okay, yeah.
And so I know we're going to ask Pastor to do a clip for the podcast outside of this.
Yeah.
But I want to ask Pastor in 5 minutes, which is impossible nearly. When you say church, I mean, there's a dichotomy. Or there was a madness, a method behind my madness. You're a therapist, but you're also a pastor. What is the church supposed to do right now? The church and the faith-based organizations. As a mother, if Mel had to go to church this morning, what is it that she would have hoped to hear this morning? Is the message supposed to change? Are we responding to the whole person?
Well, I can't speak for all churches. Unfortunately, I don't attend all of them. But if you look in general,
I'm looking in general. I'm seeing
in general
the crisis.
to see what is happening.
Yeah.
A lot of churches actually have distanced themselves. That's my observation. Okay, you have a few that organize a march against gangsterism, or in December, but the 16 days of violence against women and children, all that, and want to be in the papers and stuff. My thing is, and my whole ministry centers around not a once-off thing. It must be ongoing. I actually made a note here and say, like, community preservation efforts, where churches can play a role by making their buildings available. Okay?
Because
7 days a week.
Because that
so
buildings
5 days a week. It's closed. Drive through Mitchell's Plain. And Mitchell's Plain have a couple of thousand of churches, But the thing is just, everywhere you go, it's either open just for daycare because it's money, But if you look, does the church have a program for young people? Okay? And then most of the time, not. Where do our kids, our boys go to after school when mommy's at work, there's nobody at home, And that is where things start. There's no one to take care of them. But if our churches are there, and they don't have to do the programs, because maybe they have the skill. But if there's community organizations, they're looking for a space, that have programs, let their churches open their doors, for that. And unfortunately, in a lot of churches, people, the leadership of the church don't know the grief and the pain and the trauma in their pews. Okay? Everything should just be fine. You must just come and praise the Lord and everything will be fine. And unfortunately, most of our churches have become, money-centered. You must give. So everything is fine as long as you give. You have to act as everything is fine. The thing is just, is the church really there? But also then, is the church equipped
I was thinking
to
about
deal
that.
with this? One of my proposals will be, we need to train normal community people, with the church people in a community, just to do the basic trauma and grief support. You know, it's like first aid.
Yeah.
You know, first aid level 1.
First
Stop the
responders.
blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, the basic, just the basic stuff. And also train people what to say and what not to say.
Sure.
Okay? When it comes to these things. Everybody wants, everybody wants to give advice. That's why one of the things to you is, stay away. Even if it's your best friend. But if they are gossipers, stay away from them. Okay? Don't take everybody's advice in the case. Okay? You have a built-in mechanism, coping mechanism that hasn't only kept you now because of this. If you look back into your life and where you come from and where you've been, and you have survived, what was that? Sometimes you have to do introspection yourself. Say, what is keeping me going? Yeah. What do I have inside of me? And each one of you different. I can't, counsel all three of you at the same time.
Yes.
Because you feel different, your emotions are different, your actions are different, you're different people. And that's what we need to respect.
And so we have 1 minute, but I want to say that I wanted you to respond to them and tell them one thing. And then I realized they're at different stages of grief. They feel all differently. But just in terms, Pastor, their pathway to healing, some of them already said they are in counseling. But right now, what you've heard, when they leave here today, what is something that they can do, if not, if they haven't done it already?
Take care of yourself. Make time for yourself. Okay? It's very important. Self-care. Okay? Sometimes because you are grieving and you're traumatized, you tend to neglect yourself. Yeah?
So, we feel guilty.
Yeah, but that's the thing, without feeling, I was going to say, without feeling guilty, you will be surprised what the difference that will make. Self-care. If I look at the nails, it looks good. But, spoil yourself. What is it that you would really like to do for yourself? Okay, think of that. And do that. Okay? Because you're concerned about so many others.
Sure.
Still. And you neglect yourself. You cannot take care of others if you don't take care of yourself. Because there's a word in the Bible that says you must love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Sure.
So if you don't love yourself, you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of somebody else. So take care of yourself first.
Thank you, Pastor. What we have to do is we're going to do a segment with Pastor alone. He's going to speak a little bit more in depth on this. But I think it's important. I want to say, I hope that you don't just look this beautiful for today. And tomorrow we're back in the Swirl Coast. But it's okay. And
as long as you're not in the street.
I think it's okay. Just knowing that the next day you would dress up again. But there's just no framework for the thing called grief. And so we want to, I'm going to work a lot with Pastor. He just doesn't know it. It started today, prophetically, Mama. But I do want to say, and we have to close, but it's not going to be the first. We're going to make sure that you stay connected, that you stay supported. Tammy, that the same support that Mal has, that we're going to give that for you. And I don't want to say this because I really don't want to quicken the process, but behind Mal's pain, lots of pain and loss, was a other purpose. And I see it. And so she's going to be there at all of the other scenes when she's ready. And so I'm going to close. We have to close, but I want to ask you if there's anything that you want to share before I close. Do it quickly. Anything. You don't have to. I just, if you forgot something, that you would say it. But if not, it's okay, then I'll close.
I didn't want to speak about my kids. I preferred not to.
Yeah.
I preferred not to. I'm sitting with the 13-year-old daughter. She's taking it very hard. She's trying to be strong for me because I had no time to grieve.
Sure.
I was 39 weeks pregnant with the incident of LeSean. At his funeral, I went into labor. I remember I told Zaino, I need to bury my child first. I prayed and I asked God to get me through. My 13-year-old daughter, she's suicidal since the incident. Got an 11-year-old son. Always been the quiet one. The sensitive one, the sweet one, the one that never gets hiding. I'm very strict with my kids though. My child turned into something else. It's cold. He doesn't speak about LeSean. When we have a conversation about LeSean, he walks out. He thought that school is currently suspended. I have to be at school on Monday because he fought at school thrice. That's not my child. I don't know him like that. I didn't know how to deal with this, Pastor, because it was the first time I was in a situation like this. When I received the suspension letter, I grabbed the belt and I gave him a hiding. So I didn't know how to cope.
Sure.
I didn't know how to deal. My kids know I'm strict. He was even afraid to give me that letter. My daughter found it in his bag. And it was the first time that he got hiding from me. The child didn't cry. He didn't cry at all. Afterwards, I was busy in the kitchen. I just heard a bang. He literally took his fist and hit against the cupboard door. So, in many cases, like I can speak about my child now, that sweet boy is only 11 years old. What goes through his mind?
Yeah.
I've got a 6-year-old that's he's outspoken. He will tell you
How he feels.
1 + 1 is 2. Now Zachariah. So I don't know how to cope with that. I really don't know. So I'm sitting with that situation. I'm sitting with my daughter. But I can still speak openly, Zachariah. He will just look at me. He doesn't speak at all. Counseling, yeah. But will that be enough?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah, quickly. Children grieve differently. And especially younger kids can't express themselves and how they're feeling. And because maybe perhaps he sees how you are grieving and what's happening, he don't, he has his own anger that he deals with, his own sadness, okay, his own emotions and own feelings. Lucky we have ways that we can work with them, okay, to deal with that and to come out, and sometimes, you have your own grief.
Sure.
And some, and some you feel too weak, so to say, to still deal with the children's
Yes.
grief. You want them, I'm the only one grieving. You take your time, you don't know what I'm going through, kind of thing. So it's good for him to have a separate therapy, okay? And we have different methods in dealing with that for children, even with your 16-year-old daughter, teenager, 13-year-old, okay? So we have different methods, methodologies and things that we use in working with them. But there's hope. Don't give up on that. And later on, we will bring in the whole family, as a combined thing. I don't know who you are going to for therapy, but maybe if they can also assist, if they have the skill to work with children. There's not everybody that can work with child and youth grief and trauma. Okay, it's not everybody. So, they try to treat it the same as with adults. And I other day, somebody, a social worker, wanted to send a child, 16-year-old, to a psychologist so he can be put on medication because of the trauma he's going to. Say, no ways.
Yeah.
You know, don't, that's one of the things said, don't overdose on medications and alcohol and substance abuses and stuff like that. Okay?
Because that is so common.
It's so common. We first run, you know, either just the client once said, you know, traumatized. So what, how did you handle this? Like the case being unhooked and others interesting.
Yes.
You know, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
How do we cope? So it's good to have support, you know, in that case, but it's not, don't give up on it.
Sure.
Okay? I know you gave him hiding under frustration.
Yeah.
Okay? Because you didn't know which way to turn and you had to learn a lesson. Okay? But there are other ways that we can deal with that.
Thank you, Pastor. I want to thank you, Pastor, for being here and for always saying yes when you are available. I want to remind us that we're just human. I want to remind the three of you that you are just a mother that's grieving. And to encourage you, to encourage your whole family, and all of you are grieving. And just love him. Love that little boy and girl. And so Pastor said when he started, and I'm going to close with it, that this is not just stats. When we hear the news, another boy in Heidelberg, another girl in Mitchell's Plain. This was lives, this was children of mothers sitting here. And so we didn't just hear statistics, we heard the hearts of mothers. We saw the tears of mothers. And so it reminds us that behind this headline was a child that was loved. And I want to remind you about that he was loved and you know it. And so the Cape Flats cannot only be known and remembered for their violence every day. That violence that steals our sons, that violence that steals dreams and courage. It must also be known for mothers like you, that is courageous to sit and you refuse to let your sons be forgotten. And so Tanya, I'm going to ask you quickly just to say his name, what his name was, and then we're going to move it there.
Just his name.
Just his name. His name was?
His name was Tariq.
Surname.
Tariq Kutsia.
Thank you.
His name was
Benjamin Hendricks.
His name was Bronte Marlon Solomons.
And so tonight, Pastor Clement said here, his mother's reminded us about something very powerful. That before, some accuse our boys of being gangsters, some of them accuse our boys of being rebellious, and they were children first, they were only little boys. And so we cannot continue to ask mothers to carry the grief of violence alone. There has to be a community accountability. And that we can't just also expect it from government. That accountability has to start in the home. That accountability has to start with our dads. It has to start with our churches. It has to start with our neighbors. And so that is our appeal tonight of Cape Flat Stories and Voices on the Bridge, is that when we bring these voices to the bridge, we ask that you stand with them and alongside them. And so to these young boys that are listening this evening, I want to encourage you that your life matters before the streets. I want to say that again, that your life matters before the streets. There is more to you than what is seen on the Cape Flats. And so to the fathers of this generation, your presence is not optional. You are equally needed for the whole family. And that your grief as a voice, it's your protection that is needed, and your protection and the identity and the direction that we need in the Cape Flats today. And so to the mothers who joined us tonight, and the mothers out there that is also grieving, your grief has a voice, and it is sacred. And even if it shakes, Tammy, and even when you can't speak it, God hears it. And your son has a memory that deserves dignity. So keep walking that road of dignity. Keep walking that road of justice for them. And so if we truly want peace on the Cape Flats, we must start by protecting our children. long before they become a statistic on the road. And so tonight we are reminded that every mother's grief that carries a story, a sacred story, and every story demands that we must do better as the whole of society. So I want to thank you for being here with us and sharing in the sacred moment. We're definitely going to have a part two. Thank you for your courage. God bless Cape Flat Stories and Voices on the Bridge. We will see you next time.